Hey everybody, what's going on? It's been a minute since we've done a reaction video, and we're getting settled back in and kind of back into the full routine. And this video popped up in my feed last night, and I thought, in the morning, I'm going to check this out. And I decided we would go ahead and do a reaction to it, because again, you guys have always really enjoyed that in the past, and I think it's interesting to kind of have the conversation. So it's a Hell Hades video. It's called Raid Has Made Its Core Game Irrelevant in 2024. And this is a topic, I don't know what he's going to say exactly, but this is something I've been thinking about lately, is that as the game has developed, a lot of the old stuff that you used to need to do, you don't really need to do anymore, like dungeon farming, for example, at least not in the same way. So I'm interested to see where his head is at with this, what thoughts he has on the rest of the game, because that's just one example of the bigger picture here. But it is something that's kind of been on my mind lately. And I've also been working on putting together a video that I want to do about Raid that sort of ties into this. So again, it'll just be kind of interesting to hear his thoughts on it all. So let's go ahead and just jump into it and see what he's got to say here.
Hey guys, this is Hell Hades. This is a Raid Shadow Legends video. Guys, got a bit of an interesting chat today. Has Raid Shadow Legends outgrown its initial fundamental content, i.e. its dungeons? I had a pretty interesting chat with Nub Raids following a discussion with the Raid developers a couple of days back. And yeah, I kind of touched on this in that video, but the more I'm thinking of it, the more I am kind of falling on Fire Knight, Dragon, and Ice Golem, which used to be the fundamental areas that you go and farm in this game to use your stamina on. I feel like they've kind of got to this place of being pointless now.
And this is the thought I was talking about having. I want to see what he says. I want to say, just to see if we're already on the same page, though. But the game, for one, the game gives you a lot of gear now. You get the logging gear. I don't know. I feel like maybe the Forge has something to do with this as well. But I feel like I get plenty of gear without really needing to farm the dungeons. I'm in the dungeons occasionally, situationally, but I have felt for a while, especially with the new season of the free-to-play account, I haven't felt like dungeons are that important. And there's been times where I've said in a video, probably I'm gonna farm Dragon real hard because I need this. But then I go through my gear and I don't really feel the pressure to do it in the way that you used to. You used to absolutely have to farm Dragon. You used to absolutely have to farm Fire Knight. It was mandatory. You needed the Savage gear. You needed the Speed gear. You needed the Lifesteal. You had to get in there. And I'm experiencing that on my Void Challenge account right now. I am having to get into the dungeons. And I think maybe from an earlier game standpoint, it's still semi-necessary to a degree. But you're getting a lot more gear from a lot more other places these days. And these dungeons just aren't as relevant. So let's continue. We'll talk a little bit more about that.
At this stage in the game cycle, which is a real travesty, honestly, because all of those dungeons are pretty well designed. The bosses are interesting and different. And I feel like the content that Raid drops nowadays has basically made those dungeons obsolete because the gear's not good enough anymore. And you're pretty well, hold on a minute. Surely new players need to go here. For the free-to-play challenge this year, basically, almost without exception, the top players in the free-to-play challenge did not spend time farming dungeons. They found all of their gear in other areas of the game, and they were able to use pretty much all of their energy on things like grinding more champions to 6-star, running Minotaur, and stuff like that, rather than running gear grinding, which Minotaur, when I started playing Raid, this is kind of where all of my energy went. Even to the point where Spider's Den, which you'd say, well, I got around Spider, surely. Accessories outside of Spider's Den are significantly better than accessories inside Spider's Den. So all four of the key dungeons that you would have started off as your kind of core gameplay loop are basically obsolete. If we go into each of them individually and look at the gear sets within them, trash, 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 trash.
Yeah.
Trash. Retaliation, extremely niche. Extremely niche. Reflex. Okay, reflex is actually probably still decent, but there's another farmable version which is better, right? Curse set is probably the only reason to legitimately go into
that
Ice
now
Golems
curse
Peak.
set is like the main reason to go into Ice Golem. Curse used to be awful.
2 sets of cursed on your whole account so that you can do some hexing if you're not running someone who does hex for Hydra. That's literally the reason you would do it, okay? So curse set is basically the only reason to come into Ice Golem. Dragon's Lair. Accuracy set, trash now. Speed set, plenty of replacements. Lifesteal. This is an argument for very early on lifesteal.
Yeah. I'm experiencing that in the Void account right now. I need some lifesteal. So I've been farming Dragon. But like, again, I will probably outgrow it fairly soon, depending on the progress of the account.
Honestly, I just feel like you get given some early lifesteal, and that pretty much sees you through. Yeah, maybe you need to do a few runs, but there's really not a lot of point. Destroy set, not really. Toxic set, not really.
Yeah, toxic set also not really. Only in my specific scenario with the Void account, which again, there's so many extra elements to that because of the design of the challenge. Toxic set is valuable to me, but that's because I can't use Kale. You know what I mean? Like, I would have already had Poisoners by now. Toxic set. And this is fixable, for the record. A lot of these sets are fixable to the point where you could make them viable again. You could make these dungeons viable by making these sets more viable. But the last change they made, man, my nose is so itchy. The last change they made to a lot of the sets, some of them were decent. Like they made Curse set good. They did a couple of things right, but they also ruined a couple, and they also just fell short. Toxic, like we're beyond 2.5% poisons. You know what I mean? Like get rid of that. That needs to go. That needs to go away. I've never been a big fan of like stronger and weaker versions of the same buff and debuff anyway. I've never liked that anyway. I think if someone has a defense down, they should just have a defense down and you work around it. You know what I mean? So toxic, if it's going to be 2.5% poisons, it needs to be a 2 set. If it's going to be a 4 set, it just needs to be a 5% poison. I don't understand why they wouldn't just do that. You know what I mean? Like we're so far in the game now. You could just give everybody access to 5% poisons with a toxic set. If I'm gonna forego the benefits of all the other sets in the game to add poisons to someone's kit, right? All of the other amazing 4 sets. If I'm gonna forego that for poisons, you could at least let me have a 5% poison. You know what I'm saying? So there are changes they could come in here and make to these sets that would shift this a bit. But I don't know how good I think they are at that. I have some good things to say about them lately. Again, the video I'm working on about Raid, I've got some good stuff to say about the things that they're doing. This is not one of them. I don't know that I think they're reworking sets super effectively, and maybe they don't want to be. Maybe they want the new sets to be. Maybe they want to push you into the new content that's difficult, that you may feel compelled to spend to complete, to acquire that new stuff. Maybe that's the point, right? Maybe this stuff is supposed to kind of get left behind over time. But if they're trying to keep the whole game relevant and playable, there's some areas that I think they're just really falling short in. So I don't know where their head's at. I don't know what their goals are. But this is fixable, in my opinion.
No. Days, no. Avenging, no. Stalwart, no. So, again, early life.
Isn't that crazy, too? Stalwart used to be really good.
Outside of that, and speed. Very early life. But even then, it's not the best use
and
of your
speed's
time
not
and
even
energy.
the thing it used to be. Speed's not even as important as it used to be.
Curing, no. Immunity,
which you really gotta be creative.
Yes, to a certain degree, but if you get bolster set from a Forge Pass, it's instantly way better. Crit damage, no. Frenzy, no. Regen, yes. Okay, fair enough. Regen is probably the best farmable set from any of these dungeons, I would say. Stun set, still decent. Savage, replaceable with other better stuff nowadays.
Crazy.
But still a decent set. The Finite's probably got the best rewards in terms of, your day-to-day. And then the Spider, obviously, you just get normal accessories here, and you can just get better accessories like elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, so where do we get all idea from then? Where's it coming from nowadays? Well, Faction Wars gives us drops to enable us some Forge materials, which is stuff like Perception, just a straight upgrade on accuracy gear. That's pretty much the one that you want from Forge sets. Early life, you do just craft any old stuff, honestly, that you get resources for, because it's better than going and spending the time in the dungeons.
Yep.
You're just looking for decent stats on any old sets. You've then got areas like Doom Tower.
Yeah, for not even close to the same amount of farming, you can get a drop of 10 pieces of gear to sift through. Like, it's wild.
You know, you get really great sets from Doom Tower drops. And again, they go into Forge passes. And you've got stuff like, what's the best ones in here, really? Guardian set early on, really good for Clan Boss, and good as like a heal mechanic, a bit like a regen set. You've got Lethal, which is a straight upgrade on Savage. That's the main ones that I would say probably you should farm. But even like Bloodthirst that you get early on is just a way to get yourself into lifesteal without having to run Dragon. So you're kind of just bypassing the dungeons to do this stuff. And then we've got things like...
I don't guess I specifically had clocked that basically not only are there better sets, but a lot of the sets are better because they are upgraded versions of what we already had. I don't think I had specifically clocked that. You know what I'm saying? Like this lifesteal set that also has crit rate built into it. It's like, yeah, so again, it's hard to look at that and think it wasn't intentional to some degree for them to force the old sets out of the mix and make these newer, in some ways more difficult to obtain sets more appealing. Maybe, I don't know. Again, I don't know where their head's at here.
Which come along, which honestly, you've got some of the best gear in the game. Bolster set, as I said, straight upgrade on shield. You've got things like Slayer set, really good damage set. You've got Righteous. It's basically an in-between resistance and speed set. You've got Defiant. It's basically Stalwart gear, but improved. So we've kind of got all of these new sets now that come in different ways.
That's interesting.
Which pretty much mean that dungeons don't need to exist anymore. You know, if you're talking about early game life, well, Clan Boss is going to drop you some gear that will just give you sort of bits and pieces as you're going. We talked about Doom Tower, and then you've got Curse City now dropping again a couple of really good sets.
You can still get a little bit of gear from Curse City relatively early game. I'm starting to get to where I can beat a few bosses on my free to play account. And I've gotten some decent pieces of gear from there. So, like, you don't even have to be super late in the game to come in here and get gear either.
And even on normal, it drops
you need a little bit of
depth
depth
gear from these bosses. Roster, but... So you're able to get yourself things like your Merciless and your Supersonic from there. So Supersonic is just a straight upgrade, or at least as good as Speed set. And Merciless gear is kind of like when I said, well, there's a new set for Reflex. This gives you that Reflex, but then with a chance to upgrade it to even better as well. So the question is, like, what should Raid do here? And even if we talked about accessories...
And also, they've done a good job in some ways of modernizing some of the... Like adding super raids as kind of a permanent thing was cool. But I don't really know why Potion Keeps and Minotaur, for example, have been left out of that. Minotaur, in my opinion, at this stage of the game, should just be taken out of the game. I think at this point, by default, like, I don't think there should be scrolls anymore. I don't think there should be a currency for masteries. I think masteries should just be a thing that you do. There's nothing to farm. There's nothing to acquire. You can just fill out a mastery tree. And then if you want to change it, you still have to spend gems to change it. I'm fine with that. But I think farming to do masteries at this stage in the game just needs to go. It's so obnoxious. I was talking to Celastro about this actually last night, and he also had a thought that, like, they could level cap the tiers, or like make certain, base it on some sort of progression of the champion, so that, like, as you get the champion to level 60, you unlock the tier 6 mastery or something. And tie it more to the champion's progression rather than having to go waste energy in a particular place, right? On my free-to-play, I'm working on building a new clan boss team with Wix, and I've been farming Minotaur for the last week because now I've got 4 champs that don't have masteries that need them, and it's like, I could be doing so much more with this energy at this point in the game. There are so much more valuable things I could be doing with this energy and time than farming Minotaur one at a time. I don't even get to super rate it. So it's costing me a lot of time. It's costing me my energy, and it's costing me my progress elsewhere. And it just, again, for a while, I understood it and it made sense and it was fine. At this stage of the game, Minotaur just feels like such a pointless, pain in the ass thing to have to do. And potion keeps, I'm fine with them still being here, but give us super raids, man. What are you doing? Give us super raids and give us some harder stages where we can go in and farm exclusively superiors if we need to. Like some of these things that are still so kind of RNG dependent at this stage of the game are really just obnoxious. So we'll talk more about that in another video later. But some of it they've just kind of left behind and seem to never have any intention to address again, which is aggravating.
Accessories, you know, even from early life, you can go into your clan shop and just buy up a whole bunch of improved accessories, right? So it's hard because you've still got to play the game long enough to get enough of good ones. Yeah, you've got to play the game enough to get enough. But if I think about what I'm trying to equip on my champs, majority of the time, I'm trying to look for the fancy accessories. Things like your Slayer sets, things like your Blood Shields, things like your Revenge stuff, Supersonic, Merciless, like all of those. There's literally no reason to equip normal gear if you've got multiple pieces of fancy gear. It's harder to get and takes longer to get the fancy gear, but eventually you get to a point where it's like, the only reason I'm farming
Show me that
Spider
banner
now is to build my silver up because I want to equip.
I want to see that
stuff.
mythical banner.
So it's a real weird spot. What should we do? Well, I do think there's an argument to say, like, these dungeons need a revamp. And by that, I mean just literally the drops that they give.
Yep.
Now, what about if on hard stages, they keep just the sets that have still got some value, and then the other sets get replaced with their upgraded versions?
That's a great idea.
Like, imagine if there's these three sets, Regen, Stun, Savage, and then we add in Bolster, and we add in like one more, like Slayer or something like that, which is normally a Forge Pass set. It would make people go back in those dungeons and actually farm again.
They could do that. Another thought is there could be a little tick box next to each set. And if you don't want it, just exclusively for the hard dungeons, that could be your reward for making it to the hard dungeons and being able to farm them. You can control which sets are going to drop. So if you need regen and you only want regen, you can go in there and turn off everything except regen and just farm the regen. Or maybe they limit it to like you can get it down to 3 sets minimum if they still want RNG to be a part of it. But like they could give you a little bit more control over what you can go in there and get. So that, because I think part of it too is like, I mean, he's got super raids on, but we're talking 40 energy a run because super raids. But like that's a lot of energy to go in there and blow in hopes that you'll get regen. There's so many possible drops in here. You might farm all day and get no regen, and then the regen you get might not even be usable if you get any. Like, so they could give you a little bit more control over what drops in here. I also think what he's saying is fantastic. Replace in the hard dungeons. Again, give incentive to get there. Replace any version of these sets with the better version of the set. I think that's a great idea.
Because getting mythical pieces in those different sets is still worthwhile. Similar with Dragon, like it's pretty much like delete the lot on hard and start replacing it with some of those other fancy sets that are now elsewhere in the game. Because at the moment, I honestly, unless I am doing a fusion and I have to run this dungeon, there is zero reason to do it. And that's the same on my free-to-play, by the way. It's not just because I'm an endgame player. It's the same thing on my free-to-play. You know, Ice Golem,
it's true.
It's literally how life, offense, defense, crit rate, gear
that's
is
crazy.
sitting in hard Ice Golem.
That's crazy. It'd be an Ice Golem 10 getting fucking life sets. That's wild.
You know, this gear is literally useless about 2 weeks after playing the game. So it definitely feels like there's got to be an area that Raid should do a revamp on. And otherwise, it
is fixable. In multiple ways.
It makes a bit of a mockery of doing stuff like Dungeon Diver events, Dragon events, for fusions and stuff, because people are just like, well, I'm selling everything I get, with maybe the exception of like 1% of the pieces. And at that point, it's you're just converting stamina into like event points rather than trying to get that moment. And the whole reason we play these is for the grind. It's for that kind of like fun moment of, did I get an upgrade? Did I get something cool that I could put on my champion?
I experienced that.
Well, that doesn't exist anymore. So
on the Void account,
the fun of grinding dungeons actually just.
But again, very specific set of challenges and circumstances on that account that make some of these things more possible. Again, my progress is much slower, so I'm stuck in these phases of the game for much longer than I would be ordinarily. If this Void account was a regular free to play account, I'm a month in at this point. I'd be so far beyond where I am right now. And I would have blown past all of these experiences that I'm getting to have again because of the Void account. Again, because of exactly what he's saying in this video.
Disappears.
For the average player,
let me know
this
what
is
you
all
think in the comments down below. Are you in the same place? Are you thinking actually dungeons are no longer relevant, or certainly these 4 dungeons are no longer relevant to you? And do you wish that they would mix it up? And also, do you wish that things like Sand Devil, Phantoms, Minnow, Iron Twins, some of the more endgame dungeons are able to kind of like contribute towards things like Dungeon Divers, and maybe should be thrown into like the events pools instead of just doing the same old 4? Be really interested to know your thoughts. Anyway,
that could be tricky because they're not approachable dungeons at all. You know what I mean? So if they get added to the event pool, that becomes kind of tricky, I think. Depending. If they're just regular events, fine. I guess I'm thinking specifically about fusions. But yeah, it is almost kind of like these dungeons just exist now for fusions. That's interesting.
Today, a bit of a rant, a bit of a chat.
Yeah,
I've been
pretty
Hell
interesting
Hades.
stuff.
I'll see you soon.
Interesting conversation to have, no doubt. Yeah, I'll be interested to know where you guys are at with this as well. And again, I want to talk more soon. I'm working on the video about just kind of the overall state of it. I just kind of want to take a look at the game for what it is. So we're gonna try to get that out soon. But I guess how often are you guys farming dungeons? Is it only for fusions? I don't think that's another thing. I don't know if I had specifically clocked, but on my other free to play that's not the Void account, I'm trying to think if I ever go into a dungeon unless I have to for a fusion. I think I don't. I think there's so much more for me to do that I'm trying to get done. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I do. I don't think I farm dungeons with any real intention anymore unless it's for a fusion. So, I wonder if they'll address this. I wonder if they've been thinking about this. I wonder if this will make them think about it. I wonder if they'll address it at all. And I wonder if they're ever going to fix Minotaur, because, man, what an outdated way of playing the game. Anyway, that's it. This was pretty interesting. This was fun. I'm interested to hear where you guys are at with it. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here for today. Appreciate y'all watching. I'll see you soon.